41. Kevin Miller joined by Senator Tom Cotton. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. Good to be on with you.
Thank you for being here. It's something called the Charles Duncan Buried with Honor Act, and I know it's something that you've been working on for some time. What is it going to do, this act? And as I understand, it's supposed to be taken up by the House today, correct?
Yeah, Kevin, it passed unanimously a few weeks ago in the Senate, and I hope it'll pass with a large majority in the House and go on to President Obama for his signature. So as many of your listeners may know, the Department of Veterans Affairs pays a death benefit for certain veterans, and for indigent veterans, those who don't have the means or the family to provide for their dignified burial, they can be buried in a federal cemetery. Unfortunately, our federal cemetery in central Arkansas is full, which means that veterans like Charles Duncan were transported to the Fort Smith Cemetery and buried there. That's regrettable, in part because it means that friends and family, once they learn of the development, face a much tougher time in visiting their loved one's grave and remembering him. But it's also regrettable for taxpayers because it obviously costs a lot more to make that move all the way out to Fort Smith. So my legislation will allow the VA to pay that death benefit for anyone to be buried in a state funeral as well, which will be good for us in Arkansas because we have plenty of cemetery space both at our state cemetery in central Arkansas and in east Arkansas as well. So I'm looking forward to the House passing this today and making sure that we give every veteran, even those veterans who die in a situation where they can't pay for their own funeral or don't have family who can support that, make sure that they get the dignified honors that they deserve as they leave this earth and go to their reward.
I'm assuming bipartisan support here?
Yeah, it was unanimous in the Senate, and the only word I've heard from the House of Opposition is some of my old friends over there who claim that they may hold it up as a practical joke.
That's
but no, I think the Department of Veterans Affairs supports it as well. I've spoken with the Secretary, who's a veteran himself, right, and he recognizes this is just one of those areas where there's an unintended consequence in the law a few years back of focusing only on federal cemeteries, which may be fine for some states, but in Arkansas, our state cemeteries have a lot more space and are distributed in parts of the state where our federal cemeteries are not. So we want to make sure that we're doing right by our veterans and right by the taxpayer.
Senator Tom Cotton, Congress working on adjournment. What is the focus on at the moment here, the business at hand?
Well, I expect that this week we'll be passing the annual defense bill legislation, which I had a large hand in writing as the chair of the subcommittee on the Armed Services Committee that oversees the Army and the Air Force, that provides all of the legal authorities, the policy guidance, and the budgetary resources that our troops need out on the front lines. It also goes a far way to trying to reform the Pentagon and cut down on some of the excess bloat and overhead there to make sure that taxpayers are getting the best value for their dollar, that as many of those dollars are going in to people at the pointy tip of the bayonet out on the front lines, keeping our country safe. We'll also pass a short-term budget that will keep the government working until President-elect Trump can take office and begin to put his stamp on those budgetary priorities. And just last night we started debate on major legislation, and I expect it will pass in the next day or two, that will really make significant changes in the way the FDA and the NIH conducts its research as well as approves medicines, hopefully streamlining some of the demonstrated technologies that have been used overseas for some time that we could get approved faster here for people who are suffering from disease and illness.
Senator, your plans during the break?
I'm going to be a new dad again during the break, so I'm going to be working to make sure that my 19-year-old toddler is nice to my newborn baby.
I'm sure it'll all work out. It usually does.
Yeah.
If you need some old dad advice, holler at me. I'll try to.
I'm not sure he's quite cognizant of what's coming yet. Although we gave him a book called "I'm a New Big Brother" about all the great things that was going to happen once he was a new big brother, and the final page of it has a drawing of mom and dad and big brother and baby, and he managed to tear the page in a way that tore the baby out to no one else.
He'll figure it out. Trust me. Senator, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Kevin. Merry Christmas, everyone.
You too. 646 News Radio 102.9 KARN. Our headlines now.